Welcome back to the Puma Podcast. I'm Tory.
Hey, and I'm Puma.
And on this podcast, we talk about Jesus, life, and everything in between. Guys, welcome back to our series in Proverbs, where we're going over some general themes, some key verses, and just general takeaways of wisdom, how we can live wisely in a foolish world.
It is a foolish world.
Oh, man.
And I want to live wisely in it.
Which is good. I'd actually be surprised if someone was like, you know what? I actually want to live foolishly in a foolish world. But yeah, the heart for us, and hopefully for you guys too, is just to be wise and to honor God despite a culture that is predominantly foolish. We want to honor God and be wise in that. And so yeah, guys, welcome back. This is our 6th episode in this series, and we're actually going to talk about something which you're all currently doing.
So I hope everybody is listening.
Yeah, I hope you're tuning in and listening. And maybe we'll define that. But yeah, hey, let's dive into today's key idea of listening. All right, Puma. So we're all listening, I think. And we're talking about listening. What does that mean? And is that just like, auditorily paying attention? Or does Proverbs have something deeper when it comes to listening?
Oh, we're talking, well, everybody listens, right? Every child listens to their parent or don't listen to their parent. Every
True.
Parent would say their children don't listen to them.
That's probably true.
Or if you have if you're an employer, you'd say your employees don't listen to you. I mean, in every area of life, wherever, people are gathered, people are speaking, and you probably had this too. Someone said, how come you're not listening to me? They're talking to you. They want you to understand something.
Yeah.
And like, you're not listening to me.
Sounds like marriage.
Sounds like marriage. Yeah. Like,
well, maybe.
Sounds like
maybe in a healthy marriage.
Yeah. There's Proverbs talks a lot about this concept of listening. And remember we had talked about kind of framing Proverbs about two different paths, a path of foolishness, and foolishness has all kinds of characteristics to it. And then there's a path of wisdom that has all kinds of characteristics to it. Mm-hmm. We also had talked about how the first 8 chapters primarily in Proverbs is Solomon speaking to his adult children or to his sons.
True.
And he says to them many, many times, like in chapter 1, he says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction." Or he says in chapter 4, "Listen, my sons, to your father's instruction." Again, he says, "Listen, my son, accept what I say." Again, in chapter 4, "My son, pay attention to what I say. Listen closely to my words." In chapter 5, "My son, pay attention to wisdom. Listen to my words of insight." He says, "Listen to me." He says, chapter 7, "Now then, my sons, listen to me." Chapter 8, he says, "Now then, my sons, listen to me." You kind of get a theme going there.
Either listening the first time wasn't good enough. Yeah, there's lots of pleading and honestly commanding to listen. It must be a pretty big deal if it's repeated so often in Proverbs.
There are 4 words that nobody wants to hear. You don't want to hear it from a friend. You don't want to hear it from, your spouse. You don't want to hear it really from anyone. You don't want to hear it from God. You know what those 4 words are, Tory?
Sorry, I'm pregnant.
No. The 4 words that nobody likes to hear, especially after the fact, is "I told you so." Have you ever heard that? Anyone ever tell you that?
Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't say it, but they just gave you the "I told you so" look.
Yeah, both. It's amazing how shameful you feel and guilty or even irritated when someone says, "Yeah, I told you so," or even gives you that look and little like twinkle in their eye. With
I told you so. So yeah. There are many situations. So yeah, the very first car I had, I owned it for about 90 minutes.
Oh no.
And so my shopping for a car, I was a couple years into college, get a car, take back to school. It was, I think it was a 79 Honda Prelude. And it's kind of, the car, I was like, oh man, it's an awesome looking car. So my dad and I found this car and $900. And I thought, oh, this is awesome. So we went and we looked at it. I said, oh, I love this car. It looked great. I said, I love this car. My dad says to me, you know what? We should take it to our mechanic and have him just put it up on the hoist and look at it just to get it checked out before we buy it. And I'm like, Dad, I want the car. So my dad, asks the guy owner of the car, hey, can we, take it to our mechanic? And I just didn't, but the guy says no. The guy said, no, $900, take it or leave it. And my dad's like, well, then we'll leave it. And I looked at my dad. I'm like, Dad, I want this car. I want this car. Dad, I want this car. And my dad said, it is not wise to purchase a vehicle without getting it inspected. And I'm like, but I want this car. And so I begged. And my dad said, fine. So we forked over the $900. Guess where we went? The first place we went?
Mechanic?
Went to the mechanic. Yeah, mechanic friend, put it up on the hoist. And he says, hey, come over here. And he says to me, come over here, put your finger right here. It's, it's up in the air. And it's the by the front right tire. And I'm not really big into name of all the parts of the car. Right. But he says, put your finger right here. See this burnt orange color here? See this burnt orange color? Put your finger right there. And so I did, and my finger went right through the metal. Like all the way through, and rust flakes flaked off. He said, this whole front right tire, the whole thing could probably fall off at any moment.
Oh, no.
And at that moment, my dad didn't say anything, but I heard screaming in my head, I told you so. And I looked at my dad, and I could just see the red coming over him. He was just so angry, not at me, but at the situation. And so I'm like, oh man. And the guy said, yeah, this car is basically junk. And we just bought it. So we actually took it back to the guy. The guy reluctantly took it back from us, but he kept $50. He gave us $850 back. But that taught me a very important lesson.
Yeah.
I really need to listen when wisdom is presented itself in front of me.
Yeah.
And, so my dad, just like Solomon speaking to his sons, hey, as a father, Solomon said, I love you, boys. I love you. Listen to me. I have words of advice. I have words of wisdom. I've done things right. I've done things wrong. And I want you guys to walk the path of blessing, not the path of pain. And I don't want you guys to have a life of regret and I told you so moments. And my dad had the same thing with me. He didn't want me to, he wanted me to have a vehicle that was going to be safe and good for me. So my dad wasn't anti me having a car. He was anti me making a foolish decision where I would have regret. And I really appreciate that. It was a lesson that I have learned and kind of passed on to my kids.
Yeah. Well, and it is a sad story, but wow, it's such a real eye-opener when you realize that our thoughts, our ideas, the things we choose to listen to or not listen to really do have real-life consequences. And I don't know how much $900 was compared to modern day. How long ago was that? I don't know, a couple decades ago. But
yeah, a couple decades, like the 80s.
yeah, 2, 3, 4, whatever, But that's a lot of money, and it's not just the money, but then relationally, how that might have or could have put a wedge between you and your father. There are real social implications that regret can actually interfere with relationships. And I think a lot of times when we think of listening to wisdom or instruction, we think, oh, it's a personal thing. Like, okay, yeah, I didn't listen to this, therefore I missed out on this one-time thing. But regret and actually living foolishly because we refuse to listen to wisdom can actually hurt relationships.
Yeah. Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of a fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice. Now, the idea in Proverbs of listening to advice, the kind of the unspoken there, if you're listening to advice in Proverbs, it's talking about wise advice, because not all advice is wise. And we'll talk about that in a future podcast. Yes. But, here, the way of a fool, or the way a fool goes about making decisions, is just kind of doing their own thing, whatever seems right to him. But a wise man listens to advice. You see, if my dad was not there that day, I would have bought the car and I would have just drove it home. I wouldn't even gone to mechanic. And who knows, a week, a month, that whole front tire component would just kind of rusted off. And there was nothing to really attach it back to.
Right,
my finger went right through the car. And, I was just, but I do what's right to me. And this is kind of our natural disposition. Our natural sinful disposition is doing whatever we think is right to us.
Mm-hmm.
And Proverbs talks a lot about this, that we are born into this world. We are born foolish. Our natural disposition is foolish. And so what seems right to us is foolish, which means we need advice. We need wisdom from outside of us to be spoken into our life.
Right. Yeah, we need instruction. And that's a very humbling thing, because speaking for myself, it's hard to acknowledge that I don't know everything, that I need help. And maybe it's even harder for maybe a guy, but when we want to be the head honcho, the leader, to realize that, I don't know everything. And even when I believe this is a good idea, it is prudent and wise. And we are literally dozens upon dozens of verses in Proverbs. The wisest guy alive is saying, hey, he was the wisest guy alive. And he is saying, we need to listen to instruction. I mean, that takes a lot of humility. And honestly, I think pride and arrogance can get in the way of us truly seeking wisdom. And so maybe listening really is a heart of humility. Maybe that's really the backbone behind true listening to instruction.
Yeah, and we are very good at tuning things out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the idea behind this listening throughout Proverbs, it's when my father says to me, we should take this to a mechanic. We should take this car to a mechanic, right? I'm listening to him, but am I really listening to him? How do I demonstrate that I'm listening? The intent of listening to my dad, and even, as it's described throughout Proverbs, is I listen with an intent to put into practice what I hear, to obey it. If I don't obey it or don't put it into practice, did I really hear it? Am I really listening?
Right. Yeah, it's one thing to hear, instruction. It's something completely different to obey and follow through. So yeah, what does it mean to really listen? It probably looks like an action, a follow through with what you've heard.
It is putting it into practice, or obeying, or following through. And so when we talk about these two paths, a path of a foolish way of life and a path of a wise way of life, foolish, they kind of, as Proverbs 12:15 says, do whatever seems right to them. But a wise person listens to advice, and that listening listens to wise truth, wise instruction, with an intent to put into practice. If you don't put into practice, you haven't listened to it. You haven't heard it. In other words, just because you audibly hear something doesn't mean you're actually listening the way Proverbs describes a wise person listens.
Yeah, because fools can hear something too. I mean, foolish people can hear the exact same information, the exact same instruction,
and still do whatever is right in their own eyes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever's right in their eyes. And so it's one thing, for a parent to say, I told you so. It's another thing for God to say, I told you so.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be there.
Right.
Do you think God, as our Heavenly Father, the one who loves us and cares about us, wants to instruct us how to live wisely in a world that's foolish, how to live wisely, even though we have, hearts that are bent towards sin? He's saying, here's what you're doing. Here's what I want you to do. Here's where you're going. Here's where I like you to go. Here's how you're thinking. Here's how I would like you to think.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, even bringing that up, God's perspective. Yeah, it's one thing to reject man. It's something else to reject God's commands. And the thing I love about even just Proverbs is because the God who has instruction for us, it's really for our benefit. I used to think, oh, God's a boss, like he's just ordering me around, judging, and wants to, make my life into the perfect thing he wants it to be, as if God has some secret agenda for himself. And really, it's for us. I mean, you mentioned regret, and my goodness, my most regretful things, it all went back. If I had just listened to God's word, if I listened to wise, godly people, those regrets wouldn't be there. And not all regrets are created equal. There are some regrets that are much more weighted than others.
Yeah, purchasing a car where the front tire is going to fall off, right? That's going to cause a season of regret, right? But I can get another car. But making a lifetime decision, I mean, people, marry someone. If there's anything that the Disney movie Frozen has taught us, right?
Yes.
Don't marry someone you met that day.
Yes.
Right?
You can't marry a man you just met.
You can't marry a man that you just met.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, there's, that's probably not going to be a wise thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is my car situation. my dad wasn't anti me having a car.
That's true.
He was anti me having a car that's not going to be good for me.
Right.
Because he always wanted what is best for me. I mean, I'm going to be driving that car, 500 miles back to college and back, that he wants a car where the front tire's not going to fall off on Interstate 80 and put my life literally, physically in danger.
Yeah, on the line.
Yeah. His advice, which was wise and sound, was motivated out of his love for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when Solomon is speaking to his sons in Proverbs, and Solomon is speaking wisdom, which is God's wisdom to us, these are God's words to us, is spoken out from a heart of love for his sons.
Right.
And when God gives us his instruction, not just in Proverbs, but in the entire Bible, it is his instruction to us, not a suggestion, but it is his counsel, it is his insight, understanding about life, family, relationships, money, my time, decisions that I make so that I can live wisely in this world, because our Heavenly Father literally wants what is best for us.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that because, well, for one, he shouldn't have to. I mean, why has God invested in my life and my decisions? But to think that he does love us, he's outside of time. He knows everything. So why wouldn't I want to listen to these literally supernatural nuggets of truth that really are wise? And I love what Proverbs 19:20 says. It says, listen to advice and accept instruction, because why? In the end, you will be wise.
In the end, you'll be wise.
And I just, we talked before this podcast about what that kind of means. Just in the end, you'll be wise. It doesn't always feel good to listen to instruction in the moment. I mean, for your dad to say, hey, son, like Puma, don't buy this car. You have to wait. You have to trust on someone else who knows more than you. But then your desires in the moment probably feel pretty cruddy. You probably don't want to wait.
In the moment, it's one thing to get a car. It's another thing to get your dream car, right?
Yeah.
It looked nice on the outside. It's the kind of car that I wanted.
Yeah.
Even though they're notorious for rusting out, it looked good. And again, the Proverbs 12:15, a way of a fool seems what is right to him. The way of a fool, what I wanted seemed right to me. Why? Because it's what I wanted.
Right. Yeah. Your desire.
It's my desire. And God is not anti our desires, but he wants our desires to be tethered to his desires for us, and to be tethered to his wise counsel to us.
Because they're
advice.
better. Because his plan is better
His
than
plan,
ours.
His plan is better.
Whether we see it or not, he really does have an invested interest. And that takes a lot of trust and humility too, to believe that God's plan is better.
Yeah, to believe God's plan is better. So many verses in Proverbs talks about listening, and you kind of see that word tucked all the time. In chapter 5, talking about listening, and he's talking to his sons about, like human relationships and marriage relationships, and makes an interesting statement here. He says, "At the end of your life, if you ignore wisdom, at the end of your life you will groan. When your flesh and body are spent, you will say, 'How I hated discipline! How my heart spurned correction! I would not obey my teachers or listen to my instructors. I have come to the brink of utter ruin in the midst of the whole assembly.'" Solomon does not want that to be the end result of his son's life.
Of his own family.
Of his own family.
Yeah.
I mean, people say that hindsight is 20/20.
Right.
And many of us, all of us, probably look back at our life and say, wow, I wish I could go back and make a different decision there. You see, we have talked already about Proverbs. The time to gain wisdom for my future is now.
Yeah.
Not after I find myself in a situation that I can't get out of with consequences. And that we are to desire to seek understanding, to understand what God has to say, and that requires effort. And that, the starting point posture is having a healthy fear of the Lord, recognizing that he is a God who is good, but has designed life for us. And if we live within that circle of safety, his wisdom, that he has what's best for us, and that we are to then, trust him, with all of our heart, and lean not in our own understanding. And part of that not leaning in our understanding is not listening to the voices and wisdom in my own head, doing my own thing, but willing to submit and listen to the wise counsel that God has for me. has for me in his word.
Yeah.
And so, to not live a life of regret and to not have those 4 words, I told you so, ringing in our head.
That really is a great conclusion, a hard one, but a good one, to submit ourselves to the wisdom of God and to the counsel of his word, that we are not to be arrogant to think that we don't need instruction, we don't need good counsel. And I love how even in our failings and even the regrets we do have, wisdom can still be found. We can still listen to wisdom, even if we do have regrets. And some are more weighted than others, right? Sometimes you don't see how it was a bad idea until the end. But on the flip side, when you do listen to instruction, in the end, you will be wise. You will see how that has saved you, potentially thousands of dollars, potentially really precious relationships. And so Puma, with all that being said, what is a good AQ for us? What's a good application question?
Yeah, he says in chapter 8, the end of chapter 8, he says, "Listen to my instruction and be wise. Do not ignore it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. For whoever finds me, wisdom finds life and receives favor from the Lord. But whoever fails to find me harms himself. All who hate me love death." See, it's not if we are going to listen, it's when we listen. We are all listening all the time to advice and instruction from everyone, from everywhere, from social media to personal friendships. So the question is, when you listen, are you listening with a desire to hear what God has to say, what God thinks, and to put it into practice? I think it's easy for us, especially in the Christian community. We can come to a worship service, or we can hear God's instruction, and we always think that it's just optional. I can treat it. It's my choice what to do with it, and in a way, God does lay it before us. We get to choose: are we going to listen and put it into practice, or we get to see it as just a good suggestion? And so when we have those moments where we need to hear what God has to say, are we willing to put it into practice, regardless of what it might look like, regardless of the consequence? Because I want the path of blessing. I don't want to destroy myself.
Yeah. No, that's a really good AQ. When we listen to instruction, do we have the courage or boldness to live it out? Because, it's so easy to hear instruction, but it doesn't change us. We just hear it goes one ear out the other. And yet wisdom, really wise people who want to live wisely in a foolish world, they put it into practice.
Yeah. When my dad said we shouldn't get this, there's a better way. Shouldn't get this car. I had a choice to make. Am I going to put into practice and walk away from the car that I wanted, trusting the wisdom of my father that there was a better way?
Right.
And that's just a picture for me of how we approach God and what he says to us.
Yeah. No, thank you, Puma. Thank you for sharing that. And just, man, I appreciate God's word. It really is a book that was made for us because out of love. It instructs us out of love. And are we going to be wise enough to obey it, to listen to it? Yep. That's good. Well, thank you. And guys, hey, thank you so much for listening. Also, I appreciate you guys joining us on this podcasting journey, and just really appreciate your guys' input. And if you have any input or questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us at thepumapodcast@gmail.com. We love to connect with you guys. And guys, hey, have a blessed rest of your day. Let's live wisely in a foolish world, not because you heard from me or from Puma, but because you're listening to wisdom, listening to the Holy Spirit's leading, and are brave enough, because it takes courage, are brave enough to obey it. So we love you guys, and have a great rest of your Friday. All right, guys, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.